Hey, this is Evan Deal, and this is Living in Indianapolis, Indiana. And on today's show, we are going to look at why Indianapolis is one of the most affordable major metropolitan areas you can live in the entire United States. We're going to dive into some of the factors that drive that cost of living and what that means for you and your purchasing power. But before we get started with that, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video on this channel so that you can stay in the loop on what's happening here in the Circle City. Now with that, let's dive into it. When you look at the overall cost of living for cities across the US, Indianapolis really stands out as someplace where you get more bang for your buck. And I'm not just talking about housing, I'm talking about all the factors that go into cost of living. It's a major boon for your pocketbook when you live in Indianapolis relative to other places. So if you look at it, Indianapolis actually ranks 9 to 10% below the traditional cost of living in other cities in the United States. And when you look at some of the biggest metropolitan areas, it's actually significantly below. It's 37% lower than New York, 20% lower than Chicago. It's kind of similar to cities in Ohio like Cleveland and Dayton, where it's sort of in the middle tier of Midwest cities. And the Midwest itself is actually considered more affordable than the coastal cities within the United States. So Indianapolis is a great place to make your money stretch and even potentially build wealth into the future because it's so much more affordable than the other alternatives across the country. Let's talk about cost of living index. Indianapolis's cost of living index is around 90. Let's put that in actual numbers though. If you earn $50,000, let's say you're in another city with a cost of living index of 100. That means you need $50,000 to feel like $50,000 in that city. But in Indianapolis, it's 10% lower. So you would only need to make $45,000 to live like that same $50,000 somewhere else. So your money goes a lot farther in Indianapolis than it will in other cities. And when you're looking at cost of living, not every area of Indianapolis is the same. There are some areas that are more expensive and some where it's a little cheaper to live. So let's go and look at some of the major areas and compare them. In Indianapolis itself, the cost of living index is 90 to 93. In Hamilton County, which is the wealthier suburbs around Indianapolis, you're looking at 95 to 100. So it's much more in line with other cities as they're more expensive places to live. In Boone County, it's around 92 to 95, and that's definitely going to depend on whether you're in Zionsville or one of the other cities in Boone. In Hendricks County, you're looking at 90 to 92. That's on the west side of Indianapolis. Marion County, which is the core of Indianapolis, is around 90. So you can definitely plug these into a cost of living calculator online and really see how Indianapolis stacks up to anywhere else you're looking at moving or maybe where you currently live. Dive into the factors of what drives this cost of living. So in Indianapolis, you're looking at a median household income of around $62,000, $63,000, which is actually lower than the national average or the national median, which is closer into the mid 70,000s. And that's because wages are going to change based on where you live, based on how expensive it is to live there. This is very normal with employers where you could have the same job in Indiana versus the same job in New York or Pennsylvania, and you're going to make less from a salary standpoint in Indiana, but your money will actually go further because of your living costs. So the median income is higher in Indianapolis relative to the rest of Indiana, but it's actually lower than much of the rest of the country. But this is to be expected based on the cost of living. But we have stable economic growth in Indianapolis. You have healthcare companies, you have logistics companies, you have technology companies, really just a wide array of industries in Indianapolis that have kept wages from spiking any sort of crazy amount. It's more of a consistent growth over time, and that helps keep that affordability in place instead of having some of the wild vacillations that you might have in other areas that are in more of a boom or bust state. The next major reason that Indiana is so affordable is the great tax structure we have in this state. So depending on where you live in the country, you are going to see differences in income tax, sales tax, property tax, every tax you can think of, right? They all have their own local variations. And in Indiana, our income tax is actually one of the lower in the country. Some states have no income tax, but they usually make up for it with either higher property taxes or higher sales taxes. In Indiana, we have a flat income tax that's in 2025 is 3%. So you see that as much lower than somewhere like California, where it's around 13%. It's going to depend on your income level, of course, but you have a lot more money in your pocket that's not going out to income tax. And when it comes to sales tax, Indiana sales tax is 7%, which is actually one of the higher in the country. It's like I said earlier, where it balances out in terms of where the tax is coming from. Every state and every locality is going to get their tax. It's just a matter of where that tax comes from. For a sales tax, that's a consumption tax, and that's a lot more controllable from your perspective as the consumer versus the income tax, which is guaranteed to come out by the state. So with the sales tax in place, you're looking at that flat 7%. There's not a whole lot of local variation in that. And that's something you see in other states and other metropolitan areas as well, is a lot of county add-ons. You don't see that as much around Indianapolis. We do have some areas that can tax locally a bit, but it's not as common as you would see in other states. And when it comes to property tax, Indiana has one of the lower property taxes across the country. The average effective rate in the Indy metro area was 0.75%. And in the US, that's actually 0.99%. So it's a pretty significant difference in terms of what you're paying on property tax on an annual basis. So there are going to be some variations as well locally in property tax. Hamilton County, which is one of the more affluent areas around Indianapolis, has a higher property tax rate than Marion County, which is where the bulk of Indianapolis sits. But on the whole, Indianapolis's tax structure is very favorable compared to other metro areas across the United States, which is why you see different businesses investing in Indianapolis. We have several corporate headquarters here, and you see affordable housing, not just within the city itself, but really in the entirety of all the counties around the city. You see new housing going up, new apartment options. This is definitely a time for growth in Indianapolis, and the tax structure is a big reason why. Another reason that you don't hear a lot of people talk about why Indianapolis is more affordable is because of the sort of natural disasters or geographic elements that aren't present here that are present in a lot of other places. Indiana is very, very much inland, right? We're in the Midwest, and Indianapolis is even in the middle of Indiana. So we're pretty far from the coasts, West Coast, East Coast, anywhere in the United States. And with that means there's no sort of hurricane. We don't have earthquakes here in Indianapolis. So you're going to see that reflected on your insurance. The one major natural disaster we do have in central Indiana are tornadoes and occasional flooding, but flooding is very dependent on the area, and most of central Indiana is relatively flat. So you don't see that as much. There's not a ton of major bodies of water. So what you do see is tornadoes come through central Indiana, and that's mainly what's accounted for from a geographic disaster type insurance. But Indianapolis residents see a lower average insurance than other people nationwide. It's about $500 cheaper, with Indianapolis ranking around $1,200 per year and others ranking around $1,700 per year on average. So that's a major benefit to living in Indianapolis relative to other areas. And the number two reason why Indianapolis is so affordable are just the day-to-day costs that you see with gas, that you see with utilities, really across the board, groceries, everyday living costs. I've talked to coworkers from different jobs past who lived across the country and even in other countries, and they would tell me what their energy bill was. I thought, what? That's wild. Even some of the costs for coworkers I've had on the East Coast, people in Philadelphia, New York, and then people in Washington or Texas. It's just significantly different than what you see in the Midwest and in Indianapolis. Let's run down some of the stats. Groceries, you're looking at 0.5% to 1% below the national average. Utilities, 4 to 5% below the average of the entire country. Healthcare, 10 to 11% cheaper in Indianapolis relative to the US. Gas, you're looking at around $3.20 per gallon. This really fluctuates all over the place depending on the market conditions, but gas is typically cheaper in Indiana than you see in a lot of other areas across the US, especially the coasts. You're looking at daily savings in the US on every essential you can think of. So we've already touched on insurance, we've talked on gas and utilities, electricity. You're really saving in every type of way by living in Indianapolis, which gives you the greater ability to build wealth, to buy things that you might be interested in, and to really build a life on those cost savings that you can reallocate those finances elsewhere. And the number one reason why Indianapolis is an affordable area to live are the housing costs. And you really see this across the board. You can go so much further with your money in Indianapolis than you can in other areas, especially coastal areas or far south areas in the United States. In Indianapolis, in like Marion County, we see median housing costs around 250, a little bit less than that. It's actually gone up over 5% here into 2025. This is actually sort of a high watermark, but in other areas, this is very, very, very low for their markets. So what we see are very affordable homes within Marion County, which is Indianapolis, and the surrounding areas. Now, if you go up to Hamilton County, which is among the more affluent areas, the north side of Indianapolis, you're looking at $350,000 median cost, which still comparing to other metros is extremely affordable, and you get really, really nice houses in that area. They're typically more expensive than what you see in other parts of the city. Even in Hendricks County, which is the west side, you see $275,000 as the median home price, and a little bit higher than Marion, less than Hamilton, but you're seeing tons of suburban options: Avon, Plainfield, Brownsburg out on the west side. And you even see affordable options on the south side and the east side of the city as well. Housing prices, from a median perspective, are much more affordable in Indianapolis than other metros nationwide. Let's run down some of the stats.
We're looking at a median home sold price of just under $250,000, a median price per square foot at around $141, and year-over-year change, it's up 5.2%.
So it's not just home prices as well. That's looking at sort of single family homes across the city. It's also for renters as well. Someone who's looking to rent a one bedroom apartment is going to look at a little over $1,000 in a lot of areas of Indianapolis. It very much depends on where you're looking. In Hamilton County, you're looking more around $1,300. But this is so much lower than the national average. You're looking around 22% lower than the national average. So even if you're not looking to buy, if you're looking to rent, Indianapolis is a much more affordable option. On the two bedroom side, you're looking at around $1,200 within Indianapolis, maybe closer to $1,600 up in Hamilton County. But still, once again, this compares very favorably to the national average. And you're able to get larger apartments for less cost than some more populated metro areas throughout the country. So I can't stress it enough. You really get a bang for your buck in Indianapolis. The cost of living is very impressive here and compares favorably across every different thing you can think of compared to metro areas across the US and even in the Midwest. Indianapolis is not one of the more expensive cities in the Midwest. It's kind of right in the middle tier. And it's just a really great place to live, and a place where you can experience all sorts of awesome cultural, sporting, and travel options right here in the 317 in Indianapolis. And it's a great place to live, a great place to travel out of. If you want to look at some of the other reasons why Indianapolis is amazing, check out the other videos on this channel. We go over Indianapolis as a whole, and we deep dive into each of the areas to show you what makes this city special. Thanks again for watching. I'm Evan Deal. This is Living in Indianapolis, Indiana. We can't wait to see you in the next one.